Well, good morning. I hope your Sunday is off to a good start. You know, things are getting more tense in Lansing as the governor and legislature disagree on budget priorities and other issues. We'll talk about that starting right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, Ed McBroom went to Lansing in 2011 to represent the 108th District in the Michigan House of Representatives, where he served 3 two-year terms. He was elected to the Michigan Senate in 2018, where he represents the 38th District, which includes all of Upper Michigan except Luce, Mackinac, and Chippewa counties in the eastern end. Senator McBroom is a graduate of Northern Michigan University and a fourth-generation dairy farmer in Dickinson County. He chairs the Senate Natural Resources and the Oversight Committees and serves as the caucus dean. Senator, welcome back to the Ryan Report.
Well, thanks so much for having me again.
Nice to have you. Did I overstate it when I say the atmosphere in Lansing is getting a little toxic now?
Well, I would say that's probably a little bit overstated versus what I've seen at other times. I think that there's still, especially with the new governor and new leaders in both the House and the Senate, there's still a bit of feeling each other out. How far can you push one thing or another? But I think it's been really pretty good and productive. I mean, getting car insurance reform done, huge victory, over 40 years in the making. A little delay, waiting until next July for it to kick in, but just a tremendous victory. So things like that I think are going well. The budget is not in any sort of impasse right now. We're in conference committees. Road funding is very actively going on. I had 2 different meetings over this past week, as a matter of fact. Many of my colleagues were in Lansing. I was attending the meetings by phone. Yeah, there's a lot going on, but I would say what I sense the most tension on is over the Line 5 issue, but otherwise the other issues are doing well.
Okay, we'll get back to all of those and talk about them in some more detail, but I think in all the time you were in Lansing, probably Rick Snyder was the governor, so
yeah,
you had both the legislature and the governor in one party, and it does make a difference when you don't have that.
But there was always significant tension, though, even with having the same party, because I would say that there was a lot less unity within the party itself, and perhaps because it was all one party, but Governor Snyder was very apolitical most of the time and would do things that would upset his own party, or he would be careless in how he approached issues and would upset things, such as right at the very beginning when he jumped in, I'm going to support this bridge to Canada, and he dropped that surprise in everybody's lap, or when it came to expanding Medicaid, there was a lot of division on those things. And so I saw times where there was some very high-level tensions, and not blaming the governor or anything, it's just a matter of how it went. So I've seen tension in Lansing before, even despite one party having all the levers at the time. And I would say at this point we haven't gotten to anywhere near that level of tension.
Okay, let's talk about some of those issues you mentioned. Are you happy with the car insurance bill that finally passed?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I'm a guy who would have seen even more change if I had to just giving people complete autonomy on choosing whether or not to have any insurance. We didn't get to that level, but we've got to a point where people are going to be able to completely opt out if they want, if they have their own health insurance or Medicare, and those who don't will still have to carry some level of coverage, but they'll have options for that level of coverage. It should be a significant savings, particularly for people who have multiple vehicles or have teenagers driving. This is going to save people easily opportunity to save over $1,000 on their costs.
As you pointed out, this really won't kick in until probably next summer.
Right.
Why was that necessary?
So some delay just for implementation purposes was necessary, and some of the original bills that the House and Senate passed, I believe, either had 3 or 6 month implementation. Insurance companies having to retool all the computers, the forms, the applications, and then through negotiations with the governor, we ended up with a 12-month delay for implementation. And then even after that, so when we start next July, there's automatic mandate on cost reduction. The catastrophic claims fee should drop down from the $220 to about $40. But even then, some of the changes that will go forward that will eventually reduce cost more will take that additional time before those cost savings are realized too. So you'll see immediate savings, and then hopefully over the subsequent years we should even see more additional savings.
What happens to those people who are under the program now receiving medical benefits?
So if somebody's already receiving, if they've been in an accident and they're already claiming benefits under the current system, they'll be able to continue, which is why we'll still need the $40 per year assessment in order to continue to maintain that until that system is finally closed out. And honestly, there's still going to be the option for people to choose to be in that unlimited lifetime coverage pool if they want to pay for that. I don't expect a lot of people are going to vie for that option, but it'll still be there if people want it.
Let's talk about the Enbridge Line 5. It's obviously very emotional for a lot of people on both sides of the issue. The governor came up with an agreement last year with Enbridge, and the legislature agreed to it for Enbridge to build a tunnel that would be guaranteed safe under the Straits of Mackinac. Governor Whitmer campaigned on concern about that pipeline, and now it appears that there's, first of all, Enbridge filed suit in court, and now the Attorney General countersued.
It's a big fight.
Where are we going? I know you sent a letter to the governor with a couple of your colleagues.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate what's going on right now, because if people are being honest and say, we need to get this pipeline out of the lakes, we're worried about it, it's old, accidents happen, the quickest way we can get it out of the lakes is to move forward with the tunnel option. When you look at the legalities surrounding ending the easement, when you look at the costs to somehow resupplying the Upper Peninsula with propane, or the downstate area with all the fuels and energy they get from the line, the only viable option is this tunnel option. And Enbridge came to the table and negotiated. They're paying the entire costs of building this tunnel. And they've been willing to accelerate that to be getting it done in 5 years. So then for the governor to come along and say, I won't accept that, you have to close the line in 2 years. And Enbridge says, well, that's not possible, we'll see you in court. And for her to say, well, they walked away from the table and won't negotiate is kind of silly. They negotiated already. I mean, we already forced them to the table and forced this tunnel option. To claim now that they're unwilling to negotiate is not honest, in my opinion. And folks like the Attorney General and others who continue to hear the data points, hear the facts, here's the UP energy situation, here's the energy situation downstate, here's what it's all going to cost us, the jobs, the money, the energy, trucks, rail, or barges on the lakes, how safe are any of those options? You bring all that to them, and the way they just cover their ears, close their eyes to the facts, can only remind me of trying to talk to a flat earth person or a moon landing denier. It's just that frustrating, because you bring it all to them, they say, oh, I didn't know that, or wow, that's new information. But then the next day they're right back on their same talking points, and they don't absorb any of the data.
Be interesting to see how it all plays out. We have to take our first break already.
All
I'll
right.
be back with more with Senator McBroom after we take this 2-minute break. Guest this morning is Senator Ed McBroom. Senator, another recent development, the Supreme Court came out in favor of allowing what's been described as gerrymandering to go forward, not taking a position on that. And this could have affected some of your colleagues in Lansing if it had gone the other way. So I assume they're breathing a sigh of relief.
I suspect so. It didn't look like I was going to be affected for my district. I was on the redistricting committees back in 2011, and what was interesting was, I mean, some of the maps were supported bipartisanly. Nobody sued over them for years. There was some disagreement amongst the Detroit caucus, amongst different people who want it one way or the other, but then a couple, some case in Wisconsin created a new theory of how districts should be drawn, and all of a sudden we were getting sued on them here in Michigan. I went through how the rules were, how we had to lay out districts, and how you have to have districts that are made up of a majority of a minority population. And with those populations moving to different regions, it creates very odd shapes. And people want to point to those odd shapes and say, oh, there's proof. But yet, we had to follow very strict rules on how to do that. And it's really difficult when you have one law that says you shall not consider race, and another law that says you must make sure that you have a majority of a minority living in these districts. Well, to the layman, that seems contradictory. Only a lawyer could figure out how to put those two contradictory statements together. So I didn't I didn't feel like the lines were, unfair, were illegal. But I've been supportive of a commission style for redrawing them anyway. Our Constitution in 1963 put forward a commission style for doing the redistricting because it didn't create tight enough standards as far as percentages, meaning how many people were in different state house or state senate districts weren't close enough. That was ruled unconstitutional. We could have fixed that. I was a big supporter of doing that. The commission that instead we adopted, I think, has some really fundamental flaws that are going to create its own nightmare of problems. And while I'm supportive of the commission idea and getting it out of the hands of the legislature, I'm not convinced that the commission that's been created is not its own political nightmare itself.
We'll see what the results are in 2022.
Yes,
I
we
guess.
will.
But there will not be a special
Right.
election in 2020. Another major issue in Lansing is fix the roads. And the governor recently criticized the legislature for not staying around and
Yeah.
fixing the problem, taking a vacation, as she described. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I would challenge anybody who accuses me of taking a vacation to come and spend a couple of days with me on the job. Today it's a number of stops in Marquette. I've been up since 5 o'clock, and then it's off to Calumet, then Houghton, Hancock. I'll probably get back home around 10 o'clock this evening. Still have to go to the barn and be with the cows after that. And so, I'm always comically amused, I guess, by this accusation that just because we didn't spend our day in Lansing, we're somehow on a vacation. I've been on calls all week. I'm dealing with road funding, budget issues. I've been out on the road supporting my constituents. And so I think that's just a tired word that all governors of both parties have used on each other for decades.
It appears the 45-cent gas tax is dead, with both Republicans and Democrats in the legislature.
It seems that way, doesn't it?
The Democrats have proposed raising taxes on corporations and on heavy trucks. What's your reaction to that?
So I think that there's room at the table to discuss those things, but I think that something that's gotten forgotten about a lot of times when you discuss where Michigan is at with taxation is to remember that during the previous decade, when you lose 1 million people from your population, you have all of these cities that are built to handle hundreds of thousands more people. The roads are built for that. The infrastructure of the city is built for that, and suddenly there aren't all those people living there paying to upkeep that. And to simply say, well, we need to continue to maintain that infrastructure for a population that we don't have anymore is really difficult without then going out and saying, let's raise taxes on those who remain, without considering, well, how much of the loss that we experienced was due to our lack of being competitive in the first place. So we moved to a corporate income tax structure. Unfortunately, we had to grandfather through the old structure because of all the promises made by the 2 previous administrations for tax breaks to large businesses that won't be over until the early 2030s. Once those are over, we'll have more than $1 billion additional revenue to spend on things, but we made these dumb promises. And then we lost all the population because those promises didn't actually deliver on better job security for Michigan. So there's a lot of nuance to all these discussions. I'm not a person who's rock solid against. I'm willing to have the discussion. I think we should talk about whether the corporate income tax should be bumped some, but we have to do it in a way that maintains Michigan's competitiveness and doesn't lose us more than we gain.
Okay. Complex issue.
It is.
Things will work themselves out eventually, I
Well,
guess.
I hope so.
We have to take one more break. We'll be back with Senator McBroom just 2 minutes from now. Once again, our guest this morning is Senator Ed McBroom. Senator, you wanted to bring something along today, so I'll give you an opportunity to talk about that.
Well, I appreciate that, Don, and I think a lot of folks around who listen to the show know some of your history, maybe all of it even. But
no one knows it all.
But you've had a great career and great service to the Upper Peninsula, and this year you were the winner of the Carl V. Pellenpaugh Lifetime Achievement Award. And the legislators from around the UP, Representative Cambenzi, Lefebvre, and Markkinen, along with myself and the governor, signed this tribute to congratulate you on that and for a great career that's been really a special dedication to what we know as someplace special. And so the last line of it says, therefore this document is signed and dedicated to express our deep appreciation for Don Ryan's generosity in serving the community of the Upper Peninsula and to congratulate him on being chosen to receive the first Carl V. Pellenpah Lifetime Achievement Award of 2019. Don Ryan truly is part of why Upper Michigan is someplace special.
Well, thanks very much. I appreciate that. Thank you. And I would add two things. Number one, I've enjoyed every minute of it, so I didn't give up things to do those things I did. And number two, I especially value the fact that this award also recognizes Carl Pellenpah.
That's right.
Who was a longtime colleague and he was a pioneer in this business and also had a great record of community service. So, I mean, that's pretty special.
When you read that tribute, you'll see in the first paragraph I mentioned that, because recognizing what Carl Pellenpah did for this community, for this station, and all of us, and what TV6 continues to do for the Upper Peninsula is just a great tribute to him and to your legacy. And it's just something special, and all of us who represent the UP downstate wanted to make a big deal about it.
Okay,
So.
well, I appreciate it very much. A couple more questions. What's happening in the Natural Resources Committee? I know you had some issues about the availability of deer hunting licenses or the cost.
Well, we're doing a lot of interesting bills. Things have been moving kind of slowly as we wait for the administration to figure out where it wants to land on these and bring their positions to the table. But we've been discussing the youth hunt, the baiting and feeding issue, particularly should the UP have a ban, should have a limited ban. We've been discussing coming home to hunt, which is an opportunity to reduce the cost of licenses to people who used to live in the UP and have had to move out of the Upper Peninsula but would want to come back, bring their kids back to hunt with their parents and other family members at the family camp. So we're trying to look at a number of issues that will slow down the attrition of hunting. We're at some estimates at 3% loss of hunters every year. And how do we, especially when you see, because of the economics of Michigan, we're losing young people, and we've slowed some of that down. We've seen some good things going on, but how do we get those young people to be able to afford to come back, particularly if they want to bring their kids back to spend time with their grandparents and aunts and uncles here?
When the governor changes, the cabinet changes, we have a new DNR director.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that performance so far?
Well, Mr. Eichinger and I have known each other for a number of years, and sometimes we've been partners in arms working on the same issue with the same mindset. Other times we've been diametrically opposed to each other. I think that probably is going to continue that way. He has a tremendous passion for conservation that I admire, but sometimes we have some pretty strong disagreements on what that should look like. The land management plan, some commercial fishing versus recreational fishing in the Great Lakes are some prime examples of where we have a pretty distinct difference of opinion.
Okay. We didn't have a chance to talk about it, but the budget, of course, is a big issue, and you guys will have to eventually come up with something that you can all agree to.
I think it's going well. It's kind of bottled down on should road funding be part of that or a separate issue, but conference committees are underway, and we're going to be seeing some good increases for education in the UP and other rural services, and paying off some important things that need to happen up here.
Okay, time for another break. We'll be back with just more for you in just a couple of minutes. The other day, as I was preparing for my interview with Senator McBroom, I took a break for lunch and had a hamburger and a dish of ice cream and realized these things are all connected. You get the connection? Well, Senator McBroom is a dairy farmer. My ice cream started with a cow on a dairy farm, and the hamburger came from a different kind of cow. And so when I got back to work, instead of getting down to business and working on planning for my interview, I was thinking about cows and ice cream and the difference between dairy cows and beef cattle. Actually, I didn't know the specifics of that relationship, so it was off to the internet to see what I could learn. As usual, there's too much information available, and my patience was a little thin, but I was able to discern that they all fall under the heading of cattle, whether they are there to provide beef or milk. Over the years, through breeding and feeding, there are some cattle that are best designed to provide milk and others beef, but they're all really cows. One other thing I did find out, according to Wikipedia, there are 1.4 billion cattle in the world. Some consider cattle the oldest form of wealth, and cattle raiding, or cattle rustling as they called it in the old movie westerns, was one of the earliest forms of theft. So when we consider the primary animals that are raised to provide food, and I realize there are those who would prefer not to see any animal used for food, my question is this: is the cow the, excuse the term, workhorse of the group? After all, chickens not only provide chickens, but eggs as well. Pigs and hogs provide just meat, but that does include bacon, which is important. Still, I think the cow is the champion when we consider all the varieties of beef and the countless dairy products that so many of us count on every day. Which brings me back to ice cream. Not everyone likes to drink milk, but there are very few people who don't like ice cream. And I would certainly be in the group that loves ice cream. A while back, my wife and I discovered a brand of ice cream that's fat-free with no sugar added. It really lets you eat ice cream kind of guilt-free from a health standpoint. It also tastes pretty good. But I have to admit, when I'm looking at the ice cream display at the supermarket, I sometimes look longingly at some of the other choices and occasionally break down and bring some home. My current favorite is salty caramel caribou. Not sure what the caribou is, but it tastes so good. It doesn't remain in the freezer very long. Then it's back to my fat-free, no sugar added vanilla. I think I should wrap up this conversation by offering my thanks to the cows and the dairy farmers who gather their milk. Without you, we would be living in a world without ice cream. And what kind of world would that be? I'll be back in a minute. Before we go this morning, let me remind you that you have some other options for watching this show each week if you're not near your TV set. It runs as a live stream throughout the day on Sunday and is also available as part of the Ryan Report group, where you can find both current and past episodes. You'll find it all at uppermichigansource.com. Thanks to Senator Ed McBroom for being here today to provide an update on legislative developments in Lansing, and thank you for joining us. Hope we'll see you again next Sunday morning.